What up, it's your boy Demon Reaction. So I just want to check this video out, and as well too though, I came across this. I'm trying to figure out. I came across this on my timeline. It's from SleepyheadDree, and I wanted to check it out. This is the first video I checked out, but I do want to check out other videos from him because I want to check his channel out. Boy, the nostalgia there would come to video games. But anyway, one of the first game console or anything of a game I own because I played the Nintendo at the time when it was out, but didn't own it. Was the Game Boy, and Game Boy was like my first handheld game console I had until I got the Super Nintendo, and then later on Genesis and Game Gear as well too. So yeah, and down the line. But other than that, Game Boy was like the original pinnacle of mobile handheld electronics as well too. Paid the way for the likes of Game Gear. We had Virtual Boy, the Game Boy Advance. There was another joint they had. And then later on, PSP and now the Nintendo Switch in a way, the handle part of it. Well, other than that, we're gonna take a look at some of the games that like Game Boy games has some dope games. Sometimes the graphics a little bit a step up from Nintendo, even a little almost close to the Super Nintendo way. But there are some times that there was the worst games in Game Boys, just like any other system. So we're from let me see the channel again. From the channel SleepyheadDree, we're gonna check out 10 of the worst Game Boy games of all time. Let's get it in this game.
Games on the Game Boy weren't expected to be mind-blowing pieces of artistic perfection. We didn't expect half of what we saw in arcades and consoles at the time. The Game Boy was meant to keep us busy from asking our parents, were we there yet on a long car drive, and adding one more shot of booze into our dad's nightly Kool-Aid. This battery-draining brick was Nintendo's second foray into mobile gaming, coming after the Game & Watch series, and despite limitations, made some absolutely addicting piece of media, such as Link's Awakening and the start of the legendary Pokemon franchise.
Yeah, definitely Link's Awakening was addictive. Like, I literally the day I finally played, I played on my phone. I did it on my phone, or what I did on no, the Nintendo Switch. They had on my Nintendo Switch, they had the old school game on there. I played it. The old school, no, the Game Boy game. I played it, and it was my game I played around the time my wife was in the hospital with get ready to give birth to my son. But yeah, it was. I finally returned to it, and it was the death, and I finished it finally. Cause I never finished it while I originally had it back in the day. But yes.
So with that in mind, how bad do you think these video game abominations were that they ended up in this random video about the worst on the console? From butchered ports to you can sell this legally, I have gathered some of the absolute waste of the black and white era so you can see how far the bottom actually goes. In no particular order, here are 10
Is that
of
Pit
the
Fighter?
worst Game Boy games.
Game Boy, oh shit.
The original Mortal Kombat got absolutely
I figured that.
decimated when it came to home ports. The violent arcade spectacle was genuinely a head-turner, so much so that a lot of consoles wanted it to show off for themselves. On the kinda sorta high end, we have the Genesis version. While not perfect, it did come with blood with a code and maintained a good amount from the arcades. On the lower end, we have the SNES version, with its sweat draining every ounce of coolness the original ever had. And in the Pits of Hell version, we have the Tiger Games edition. But right above that, we have the Game Boy copy. Mortal Kombat was released on the Game Boy in 1993 by Midway and Probe Software.
Bro, hold up. Time out. Did he just stole the... because I never played on Game Boy. I had it on Super Nintendo. Yeah, but I played them on Genesis and everything too. To me, Super Nintendo had the closest of sound and musical to the arcade. A little bit graphic too. But Sega Genesis was top tier because of the blood code. That's why, as well too. But I will say Nintendo's alternate finishers better than the Genesis non-blood finishers. I will tell you that though. For those who have not dismembered one though, and I feel like some of the Super Nintendo finisher was a precursor to some of the finishers for later finishers down the line for subs like for prime example Sub Zero on the arcade and the Genesis Blood version. He rips your head with your spine hanging, but on Super Nintendo, he frees you and then backhands you, break you in pieces. I feel like it's a precursor to the defreeze fatality on Mortal Kombat 2. Same with Raiden as well too. On Mortal Kombat the arcade and Sega Genesis, he electrocutes your head off. On the Super Nintendo, he electrocutes you to dust, which I think was a precursor for the electrocution explosion fatality. And for Giant Cage, on the Super Nintendo, he impels you, he impels you with the shadow kick, which was a precursor for Trilogy when he kicks your sides off, and one of the brutalities on the Mortal Kombat 1. But getting back to this, did he just punch the throat of ice? I'll go back real quick. Hold on.
It was released on the Game Boy in 1993 by Midway and Probe Software. Released on Mortal Monday, the same day as the SNES, Genesis, and Game Gear versions. The Game Boy port was hands down the worst.
I'm glad he called it SNES. That's really how you pronounce it. I say NES.
Besides having the worst graphics because, Game Boy, it was also limited in sound, controls, and even characters, lacking one Johnny Cage.
Yep.
The 2-button layout made it more simplistic to fight, and
but think about it, it was like alternate who was missing. On this version, they missing Johnny Cage. On the Game Boy version, it's missing Kano.
Gameplay was super slow and clunky, feeling more like you're in a PowerPoint than playing a video game. This isn't helped by the input lag when you press a button, causing most fights to be more frustrating than satisfying.
Thank God they improved a little. Then I ain't played this, but they kind of improved with the Mortal Kombat 2 and Game Boy. It was limited character. It was a little good better gameplay.
Not to say that you'll have much difficulty with the computer, as spamming the same jump kick will lead you to the promised land. I debated on putting this or Mortal Kombat 3 on this list, as that game is also god-awful and a poor port of this.
Oh yeah, the Mortal Kombat 3, I played. No! I played that on emulator. Mortal Kombat 3 is bad, but worse, in my opinion, worse is 4. 4 is the worst.
Source material, but I genuinely had more enjoyment out of that one for its many faults, and just couldn't be bothered with this game.
That was nice.
Castilian was released on the Game Boy in 1991 by Bit Studio, a port of an original game called Nebulous released by Hewson Consultants. Castilian is a puzzle game about the creature Julius as he ventures across 8 different towers, avoiding obstacles, enemies, and a time limit to make it to the top and venture to the next. This game is on a variety of consoles beyond just the Game Boy, such as the ZX Spectrum, the Commodore 64, and Amiga, and the game shifts identities with each release, with the main character originally being known as Pogo, or Kyoro-chan in Japan. It also played a lot better on those consoles as well, with this port in particular being very poor. The difficulty lies within controlling your random alien friend, as in trying to make it seem like the tower shifts with movement, it comes across as the game taking the controller out of your hands, which can lead to your doom if you miss a door or elevator and hit a fake floor or enemy. By the way, you only lose a life when you hit the water, so hitting an enemy but landing on a platform below will keep you in the fight. Too bad though, as that most likely means the time limit will be your biggest enemy from then on. This game's time for each level is super strict, with you being able to maybe fall once or twice before it becomes impossible to finish, barring a miracle. This frustration, mixed with general boredom, just makes this port of an underrated game a disappointment, to be sure.
That was nice.
Oh boy, unlike...
Yeah, Pitfire. I can see it, yeah. It's just like Mortal Kombat. If you have like a sprite motion game is not gonna work on a portable bit game console like Game Boy. So yeah, I can get it.
Like Mortal Kombat, I never liked the original Pit Fighter in arcades. It was a mindless beat-em-up style fighter that got dull by the 3rd fight in, and even then, its ports got done even worse than the original Mortal Kombat. Pit Fighter on the Super Nintendo is one of the worst games of all time, and somehow, the Game Boy game is better than it. Not really, but it would be really funny if it was. Pit Fighter was released on Game Boy in 1992 by Tengen. Like the arcade original, you control one of 3 fighters with different skill sets as they fight opponents one after another in an underground fight club. Now, the good digitized graphics, music, crowd participation, and weapons of the original, you ain't getting none of that here. These graphics look like each fighter is in the witness protection program, and the crowd are the same repeated GIF all around you. In terms of fighting, well, it's Pit Fighter. The sprites will vaguely flail in the direction of the opponent, and maybe will connect, and maybe it won't. The only way you'll know you are hurting your opponent is paying attention to your health meters, and just like the SNES version, they don't heal between rounds. And with no continues, the game is ending sooner than later. And each time the boss of the game comes on screen to taunt you. Well, screw you too, game. I didn't want to play you to begin with.
We got next.
Simpsons games are pretty much just expected on any video game platform. It's like a rite of passage, and the Game Boy was no different.
Especially around the time in the 90s where like damn near anything that was a franchise or a TV show, movie or something got a video game for almost every single console at the time. So yeah.
How not to do a Simpsons game, however, can be found right here. Bart Simpson's Escape from Camp Deadly was released on the Game Boy in 1991 by Imagineering. Based on the episode Camp Krusty, though strangely released before that episode, you control Bart as he and Lisa must make it out the camp they've been subjected to without losing all of his lives. On top of the other campers, camp counselors, and even the wildlife having it out for Bart, he must escape the grasp of Iron Fist Burns, Mr. Burns' abusive nephew. This game is a simplistic platformer, taking the graphics from the Simpsons games on NES, which honestly look impressive on the handheld brick. What's not impressive is how boring the game is. And when I say boring, I add in an extra helping of mayonnaise and a documentary on the filing of literature in the library. You control Bart as he goes about camp, either jumping over or throwing projectiles at enemies that will just run at him. The platforming doesn't extend past jumping over water pits or climbing up trees, so more often than not, you'll just find yourself holding right and reacting immediately to any obstacle. The gameplay switches up slightly in the food hall stages, but if you think just throwing more projectiles at people is more fulfilling, then you'll get your wish, I guess. The game is simple, nothing really stands out, and the platforming is just poor. Nothing will entice you to want to play past when you finally turn the power off. Batman Forever was released.
I think it was the first Batman movie. Yeah, Batman Forever. Yeah, again, it's because that's like another somewhat of a sprite animation, a humanized sprite animation in a way. Because if you see the Super Nintendo Genesis, pretty much like that. That's why.
On the Game Boy in 1995 by Probe Entertainment and Acclaim. This game was released on a variety of consoles at the time, including the Super Nintendo, Genesis, and Game Gear, and judging by the reaction of those, this version didn't have much of a chance of standing out to begin with. Based on the 1995 film of the same name, you control either Batman or Robin as they work to foil the schemes of Two-Face and the Riddler, one tiny sprite at a time. Seriously, these sprites are so tiny. And though the game used the Mortal Kombat engine for its fighting style, you can barely see it with how much you have to strain to see your character beating up on fools. Unlike the other console versions, most of the traversal and puzzle solving has been removed, leaving the only thing they left to do is to lay the smackdown. And unfortunately, laying the smackdown doesn't exactly bring video game fun to the player. The game retains a lot of the features of the other versions, including picking your bat gadgets and scenes of the duo traveling in each location. But when fighting is this monotonous and sluggish, you don't really find the time to appreciate it. Really, this game doesn't really have anything that stands out in its favor, leaving it to fall in the dustbins of history as a forgotten age of movie tie-ins. Sad, as some other Batman games really succeed in being fun, Batman Forever just doesn't hit the mark. The Game of Harmony was released in 1990 by the Code Monkeys and is a port of a game released for other consoles named Emotion or Spiritual. In this thrilling adventure, you pilot the adventurous Captain Ron Danger as he flies his magnificent spacecraft XLR-1 across many different galaxies, moving different dangerous explosive alien material to its match, which causes it to diffuse, thus saving the universe. This summarization is a whole overcomplication of what this game actually is, where you match shapes before they explode, causing your ship to spontaneously combust out of embarrassment. That's really...
I will not mess with a game like that. That would broke my nerve. I'm gonna tell you that right now. A game like that would definitely work my nerve for sure, yo.
Imagine asteroid controls, but instead of shooting different asteroids for points, you're moving bubbles with shapes to match each other. And when two different shapes collide, they make a
move it to make them match. Nah, that's too much right there.
Tiny new shape baby that will give you points or will go into a new shape bubble if left unchecked, leading some levels to become absolute hellscapes of Sesame Street's nightmare. This game is not fun. I can make some witty comment about it, but I'm not putting in more effort than the developers did. The ship controls are super frustrating, and if I had $1 for every time a bubble didn't go anywhere near the way I directed it in, I'd at least be able to afford a Five Guys meal. Simple games go hand in hand with the Game Boy, but accepting games of this quality is just pitiful. You can do so much better.
Alright, what's next?
Tasmania Story was released for the Game Boy in 1991 by Pony Canyon.
If that is the darn graphics of the players, I can already tell it's about to be bad already.
And FCI, no, this is not Tasmania or even related to the Warner Brothers Tasmanian Devil. This game is a port of a previous Pony Canyon game called Fruit Panic and is a mix of Pac-Man and Mappy. The game is also based on a TV drama called Tasmania Story, which is the heartwarming story of a father and son reconnecting over the father's obsession with the Tasmanian wildlife, and more precisely, looking for the extinct Tasmanian tiger. How is this represented in video game form? Well, you are this guy in each level, seeking to gather all the level's plant life and find each animal representation before moving on to the next. 4 wild animals don't like you hanging around, however, and will chase you across the plains. The player character can drop bombs and jump on their heads to take out enemies. However, one touch and your life is gone. Besides the bonkers quote-unquote premise, the game in general is super simple and by extension, feels pretty lifeless. Playing on the slow difficulty is a cakewalk with the small boards not exactly requiring much planning and difficulty to get around. But switch it to the fast difficulty and it's like the enemies will converge on you like a heat-seeking missile. This also disregards that the game never ends if you don't find an animal representation in each looping level, which the game never thinks to tell you to do. If you want a truly fun puzzle experience, just play Mappy, though it loses points by not being based on a mature coming-of-age movie as well. Monster Truck was released for the Game Boy in 1990 by Another, a simple racing game. You control your rinky-dink monster truck across a track, racing across other trucks who somehow start before you like the cheating bozos they are. And the first thing you notice is, holy shit, is this slow? Like, I know this is the Game Boy and all, but other racing games on the console displayed speed a lot better than this game. Your truck hums around like it has major engine trouble, and any opponent you come next to will immediately sideswipe you. This is before you get close to any obstacle in your way, which you would think as a monster truck you could easily scale, but nope, your truck will literally go flying instead of going over simple objects like logs and hills. The cool thing about this game is after each race, depending on your placing, you can get money to upgrade your truck for as much as that helps you. And then it's on to the next, and the next, and the next. This game wasn't enjoyable to begin with, but continuing to subject yourself to it should instantly earn you a pair of grippy socks. Don't look any further, this truck is totaled. Mousetrap Hotel was released for the Game Boy in 1992.
Is this based off the board game?
By Imagineering. Sorta, kinda, but not really based upon the board game Mousetrap. You control a mouse named Maxie as he goes level by level trying not to be absolutely skewered by the various obstacles and mousetraps littered around the area waiting to catch you. The ultimate goal is to make it to the top of the building to visit his girlfriend, but I would say the ultimate goal is to not launch your Game Boy out of the window playing this. Maxie can defend himself with his tail that grows longer every time you collect big cheese and gets shorter every time you get hit until he loses a life with his chub of a tail. Enemies and traps can usually be brushed away, but man, they absolutely will annoy the hell out of you with how bad the platforming can be. And you'll be annoyed with most of the game, to be honest. The controls will have you get hit more often than not with how floaty things feel. And once all your lives are gone, oops, back to the bottom at the start to restart this unfun experience. At first, you won't mind the game, but constantly having to restart will greatly grind on you, which will end up leading back to the Game Boy flying out of the window pun I made earlier. Hopefully, you don't kill anyone doing that at least. Well, they can't all be winners. Castlevania The Adventure was released for the Game Boy in 1989 by Konami and is the first title in an acclaimed vampire hunting series to be featured on the platform. You control Christopher Belmont, ancestor to Simon, who goes through the standard issue Belmont playbook, grab whip, look fabulous, and slay Dracula one level at a time. If you are familiar with any other Castlevania game, this one will be no different. You go across each level, defeating each of the various monsters and ghouls that come in range of your whip's length on the way to a boss at the end of the road as you make your trek to Dracula. Nothing new, right? Well, let's get started on what drags this game down. For one, this game is brutally slow.
Oh.
Christopher hasn't done his cardio, because even with how historically slow the Castlevania games are, this one stands out above the rest. His jumping ability is even more frustrating, with falling either off a platform into a pit being more common than not. Second, remember the fun sub-weapons of the previous entries? Well, they aren't here, leaving just his whip as your only weapon. Now this sucks, but wouldn't be much of an issue, right? Well, some galaxy brain decided that in this game, that getting hit by an enemy would immediately downgrade from the upgraded flame and chain whip back to the basic short leather whip with only a limited amount of upgrades per stage. This is supposed to promote getting good, but it's super frustrating, and combined with the general malaise feel of the game in the short length, only being 4 stages, makes this entry stick out like a black eye. This critique isn't wholly fair, as I'm coming at this from a 2025 mindset, and back then we were just happy with what we got on the system. But I can't deny that this game is just not fun to play anymore. Somehow, this game got a remake in 2009 called Castlevania The Adventure Rebirth that was released on the Wii that corrects a ton of mistakes of the original, and I highly recommend you check that one out rather than this. How did you enjoy the list? Did I not include a game that you want to whip me across the face for? Leave it in the comments below. Thank you, and have a good one.
Yeah, the one he listed was interesting ones, especially ones I knew about, like Pit Fighter. Like I said, Mortal Kombat Pit Fighter and the Batman who suffered from, like, you know, humanized sprite being on a console game like this. Yeah, it was not gonna look. It was already a recipe of a disaster. I get it. You wanted to give money from the Game Boy player, you know, because some folks have parents who. I had a parent who had to play. When I wanted to play Mortal Kombat 2, I had to play it on Game Boy. Since the only version had blood, everybody else has blood. Same with Mortal Kombat as well too. But yeah, other than that, shout out to SleepyheadDree. And we'll check out some more of his other videos as well too. If you like my reaction, like, share, subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's your boy T-Bird signing off. One love.